I don't care what anyone says. Mario Kart World rules! One of the best games in the series, for sure. And now that I've been playing it for about a year, I wanted to be unoriginal and rank all 30 of its standard tracks. I waited a lot longer than most to do this kind of video, because I really wanted to solidify my opinions. These rankings are based on a variety of factors, such as how fun the layout is, the visuals and theming, and the music. While I don't care as much if a track implements the new mechanics as the average person, I'll still bring that stuff up whenever it counts. I'll also talk about free roam if a track has anything worth talking about. And do remember, these are my opinions. Feel free to respectfully disagree with me. Anywho, if you do enjoy this video, here's your obligatory reminder to smash that like button and subscribe with post notifications turned on so you don't miss any new content. With all that out of the way, let's jump right into it. Ready? Let's go! Before we dive into the real 30-track ranking, I would like to at least mention the version of Peach Stadium from the Shell Cup. Yeah, this is one of the worst Mario Kart tracks I've ever played in my life. It's a giant rectangle with some cars that aren't much of a threat. Yippee freaking wahoo! It doesn't even have the mild chaos of Koopa Troopa Beach or the mindless trick-spamming fun of Sky High Sunday. With those tracks, there's at least something that brings me joy. This, on the other hand, has nothing! But the good news is, it doesn't count for the actual ranking, because you can only access it from intermissions, which I'm not covering. And it would have been dead last anyway. But that's enough yammering. Let's get this show on the road. 30. Desert Hills. This is one of two tracks whose inclusion makes me wonder, why? This is a track that a lot of people, myself included, weren't a huge fan of in Mario Kart DS or Wii. But did they at least improve the track? Well, yes, but also no? Driving on this track definitely feels a lot less annoying than on DS or Wii due to the lack of slippery controls, and this new dune section in the middle is actually kind of fun. But the theming is way worse. It originally had a Super Mario Bros. 3 theme with the angry sun as the primary obstacle, and that was actually pretty interesting. But in this game, it just looks like a cookie-cutter desert track, and the only obstacles are these Moai dudes from Super Mario Land, which aren't nearly as cool as the original obstacles. What makes it even more jarring is the fact that the finish line literally has an Angry Sun insignia on it. Also, Pokies and Fire Snakes appear on the intermission from Shy Guy Bazaar, but not the actual track?
Konnichiwa?
Why couldn't we have gotten Yoshi Desert or Dry Ruins? Either of those would have been far better picks. So yeah, this track definitely doesn't deserve to be here. But unlike my other last place picks for Mario Kart games, I'm actually not entirely opposed to racing on this one. Don't ever expect me to seek it out though. 29. Koopa Troopa Beach. When I saw that name for the first time, I was expecting the N64 track. So you can probably imagine how I felt when I realized it was actually SNES Koopa Beach 2. But as far as SNES remakes go, this is pretty alright. I mean, it is just a circle with like 4 trick ramps, so there really isn't much to do here. But the vibes of the track are immaculate with that sick-ass beach party going on and the absolutely banging music. I also like that it stays true to Super Mario Kart and makes the track 5 laps instead of 3. And the layout does feel a little less awkward than its previous iterations. Items can sometimes get chaotic here, and unlike Baby Kart, it doesn't make the experience frustrating. But again, in the broader scope of things, you're driving in a literal circle 5 times. And because of that, I can't justify placing it higher than this. Something of note is that the area surrounding the track includes Koopa Beach 1's layout, which is pretty neat. So all in all, I'd say this is an inoffensive track. 28. Moo Moo Meadows. Bruh. Are we serious right now? Look, I get it. Cow is a playable character. But we literally just got this track in Mario Kart 8. We didn't need it again. It also doesn't help that this is one of the weakest nitros from Mario Kart Wii, in my opinion. At the very least, they sorta spruced up the layout with some elevation and stuff, and they gave all the structures a subtle hot rod aesthetic with flame motifs, which I actually quite like. In all honesty, I consider this the ultimate version of Moo Moo Meadows. It's just the fact that they chose this over something like Piranha Plant Pipeline or Dry Dry Ruins that rubs me the wrong way. And if they really wanted to include a Moo Moo track, would it have killed them to make a new one? That would have been a lot less jarring. Whatever, moving on. 27. Shy Guy Bazaar. This track finally got its chance to shine again after being shunned out of the base Mario Kart 8 DLC and then the Booster Course Pass. But to be honest, I think they should have done it in the Booster Pass instead. The layout is still great fun to drive around, and they implemented the new mechanics in some really creative ways. But there's something about this track that pisses me the hell off. What the f is up with the Daisy theming? Like, come on, people! This is supposed to be a Shy Guy track, goddammit! Like, just hear me out. This track absolutely deserved to get a remake, but if I knew this is how they were gonna treat it, I for sure would have just taken it in the Booster Course Pass, where I know it would have been just as good as the original. On a positive note, though, this track is by far one of the most immersive ones to explore in free roam, mainly due to the added palettes. In fact, 2 of the intermissions leading to this track use a whole other track layout within said palace, which is just insane. At the end of the day, I'm both happy and angry with this track. And Nintendo, please, for the love of Pete, stop making Daisy fans happy! The only thing they deserve is to suffer! 26. Starview P. A track inspired by the Comet Observatory is a brilliant idea, but this track feels underwhelming, which sucks. The first half has Ice Ice Outpost vibes with a yellow and green road split into 2 and some sweet verticality. It's kinda cool, but definitely feels a bit bloated. The second half is somehow less engaging. You glide onto this floating path of glittery blue water with a bunch of boost rings lining the outside, and your vehicle enters this permanent boost state where you're constantly going faster. The problem is that this portion is just 2 long straightaways with a couple mild turns to the right. While this is somewhat alleviated by the whole permanent boost thing and this trick ramp you can take, it nevertheless feels drawn out, even compared to the first half. At the very least, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it is kind of fun to hit a bunch of boost rings in a row. I also think instead of having a glider at the end, it should have fully utilized the carpeted section of the observatory from the track's intermissions. That would have bumped it up a few points for sure. But hey, at least the music is pretty sweet. 25. Peach Beach. I have some weird feelings about this track. I honestly thought it was really boring, if not a bit frustrating at times, in Double Dash and Wii, so I was skeptical about its inclusion. But when I actually played it for the first time, I was proven wrong. Mostly. This track takes a page from Mario Kart Tour and 8 Deluxe's books and expands upon the original setting in some honestly pretty creative ways. The first lap is the same old track as before, with the only true difference being the fact that you can drive on the water. While this makes it easier to avoid those godforsaken cataquacks, it also pretty much makes this lap a glorified oval. But things get really interesting on the second lap, where it takes you to this brand new resort area. This part of the track heavily utilizes tricks and wall riding, making it feel really fulfilling to go through. But the third lap is just, ugh. It starts off fine with a fun glider section down the resort with a few more spots for tricks and wall rides, but after that, it becomes an overly long water section with nothing going on except one sharp turn. Oh my lord, what a drag! So in the larger scope of things, this is definitely an improvement over the original because it adds more to what was previously a lackluster track, but that third lap alone holds it back from being truly great. 24. Mario Bros. Circuit. With how much I like Mario Kart Stadium as an opening track, I was really hoping this game's opening track would be good as well. And I think it's safe to say, yes it is! The layout is pretty simple, but the turns don't feel boring to go around, and it shows off the rail grinding mechanic decently well. It even has an alternate path at the end to shake things up a bit. It uses a glide ramp in a somewhat unconventional way, and it can even lead to a neat shortcut where you take the first turn faster via a hidden grind rail. The aesthetics are also nothing like any opening track we've ever seen, with it being set in a red mesa desert and having structures that give Radiator Springs energy, which I'm totally cool with. It looks even cooler at night with all the neon signs lighting up the landscape. All in all, the track does a pretty good job at easing you into the game, and its bright, open atmosphere fits in perfectly with the game's overall vibe. The music is pretty good as well. So good on you, game! You gave us another opening track that I genuinely looked forward to racing on. 23. Salty Salty Speedway. This is a track that's grown on me a little bit. It has a fairly simple layout, but I enjoy a race or two on it, and the Amsterdam/Venice theming is quite nice. The music is pretty alright as well. However, a lot of the track takes place on water and, well, the water physics in this game aren't the greatest. I don't exactly hate them, but I don't love them either. Like I said though, the layout is enjoyable overall, and thankfully, there are quite a few alternate paths that let you get out of the water, with the best one being this wall ride after the mandatory non-water portion that leads to a glide ramp that lets you traverse the last portion in a much more satisfying way. Speaking of, the last portion of this track is a whole lot of nothing. It's just a wide, empty straightaway. It also doesn't help that the track right before this in the Banana Cup has a similarly bland ending. All in all, this is a pleasant track, and I certainly won't groan if it shows up in a random selection. 22. Mario Circuit. I can't believe it! They actually made SNES Mario Circuit interesting for once! The aesthetic looks better than it ever has, with it feeling like a proper motorsport course. But the best part is that it combines SNES Mario Circuit 1, 2, and 3 into one big track, and because of that, things are kept fresh with each lap. We are talking about SNES Mario Circuit, so none of the individual layouts are all that interesting, but when you merge them all into one big track, things actually get pretty juicy. You'll be making sharp turns constantly, and the music is still catchy as ever. It's a bit of a bummer that Mario Circuit 2 doesn't have a glide ramp like in Mario Kart 7, but oh well. Also, unlike a lot of other tracks in this game, this one isn't a parkour simulator, which is a breath of fresh air. Also, for some reason, Nintendo is allergic to Mario Circuit 4. Why didn't that track get a chance to shine in the Booster Course Pass? But anyway, I can gladly say that I don't consider this track a wasted slot, because it takes a tiring, samey concept and expands upon it. 21. Faraway Oasis. African Safari is a track theme I never would have expected. Even so, this track ain't half bad. The layout is similar to Riverside Park, which itself is a solid enough track, and there's a decent amount of variety to be had here. This spiral turn has an upper and lower portion, and the road right after it is split up by a grind rail. Then there's a short water section with a couple higher paths that let you stay out of the water, and unlike others, this water section doesn't feel too slow. After that is a wide turn on a waterfall, which is kinda reminiscent of Koopa Cape. Neato. Then you take one more super sharp turn, and you're done. It's a pretty solid ride. But there's one thing about it that's weirdly bothersome. You see, the intermissions leading to it have various animals roaming around, which act as obstacles. As for the track proper, there are animals still, but they're all just for show. Why is that the case? But if you ignore that and the strident music, you're still left with a pretty fun and varied track with a very unique theme. 20. Cheep Cheep Falls. I wouldn't have expected a track with that name to be a Japanese flavored track, but it's pretty nice, I'll admit. On my end, this track has a weird blend of fun and frustrating. On the one hand, it utilizes water driving in such a way that feels a lot more speedy than a typical water track. But at the same time, it's one of the trickiest tracks to race on. The first part has some sharp turns going up the hills and behind a waterfall, with nothing too crazy going on outside of the really nice visual spectacle. But then you enter the river rapids, and things suddenly get a lot more intense. Mostly for the better, but a little for the worse. Making all these tight turns while driving on rushing water is exhilarating, and there's quite a bit to look out for, whether it be the random rocks or the Cheep Cheeps jumping around. However, not only do the awkward water physics rear their ugly head here, but the track actually punishes you for doing tricks, which is annoying as hell. There are times where it feels like I'm actively fighting against the track. But hey, maybe it's just a skill issue. I don't know. Even with those negatives, it is a blast if you can get the lines right, so I can't rank this track any lower. 19. Boo Cinema. Nintendo keeping up the streak of making their ghost tracks actually interesting. I mean, this has gotta be the most creative idea I've ever seen for a Mario Kart track. You literally drive into a movie screen and on top of giant film reels. Dare I say, it's absolute cinema. As for the track's gameplay though, while I do find it enjoyable to race on, I wish there was a bit more. In particular, I wish the movie section was more varied and a bit longer. But as it stands, it's a fun enough track with a stellar theme and amazing visual spectacle. And honestly, that's good enough for me. On another note, like Mario Circuit, there isn't much emphasis on the new mechanics, which makes it feel more like a classic Mario Kart track. This is another track that's pretty fun to explore in free roam as well, especially considering that the boardwalks outside the cinema have the layouts of not just one, not just two, but all three SNES Ghost Valley tracks. 18. Peach Stadium. After all these years, we finally got a track built entirely around Peach's castle. This one has satisfying turns, verticality reminiscent of Mario Kart 8 Anti-Grav, and some cool alternate paths that allow for rail grinds and gliding. But they're used rather sparingly, which overall makes this track feel more like a classic Mario Kart track. One pretty notable thing this track has going for it is this narrow road with dash panels. Because the road is so narrow, taking an outside drift and hitting the dash panels and then immediately trying to turn the other way can sometimes send you off into the grass. Wowee! Track design! And honestly, I don't have much else to say. It's a fun track with cool extra paths and a decent enough theme. And with it feeling more like a circuit track than a stadium track, I definitely think it's up there as one of the best circuits in the series. This track is also really fun to explore in free roam due to the sheer size of the castle. The only real downside is that I don't care for the music, but other than that, it's pretty good. Also, it is pretty weird that this is the penultimate track in the Grand Prix right before Rainbow Road, but the Grand Prix cups in this game are weird as hell, so I'll cut it some slack. 17. Crown City. After the huge amount of Tour City tracks in the Booster Course Pass, I get why a track like this would feel monotonous. But I like big cities, so I'm not bothered. This track is an interesting one to talk about. When playing it from intermissions, there are 3 different layouts you can get. The first takes you across rooftop solar panels and this huge-ass golden tire. The second features a skate park with a half-pipe and a back alley area. And the third has a brief water section with a pier. These are all decent enough, but nothing that really wows me. However, when selected by itself in Versus mode, this track takes after the Tour Cities and meshes those layouts into one giant track. Well, it actually only includes parts of the second and third layouts, but I digress. By Tour City standards, this is up there with Singapore, Madrid, and Athens as one of the best. The layouts mesh together without feeling cluttered. There are a decent amount of standout moments, and it's overall pretty enjoyable to drive on. The music also sounds weird in all the right ways, and I enjoy it. Similarly to Peach Stadium, exploring this track in free roam is quite a fulfilling experience due to the city's huge size. I can understand if you think this track is just whatever, but I personally quite enjoy it. 16. Dandelion Depths. This is like a diet version of Steam Gardens from Super Mario Odyssey. A lot of people seem to not like it very much, but I think it's pretty cool. The layout isn't doing anything all that special, but honestly, that doesn't bother me too much. It's fun to drive on and has a decent amount of things to do, like tricking off of ramps and the occasional wall ride. My favorite part of the track is this absolutely beautiful cave section. I know it involves water driving, but I barely even notice it, cause I'm just having mindless fun spamming tricks down these slopes. And after that, we get this nice uphill section with a bunch of speed boosts, which gives me serious vibes of Rock Mountain, my beloved. God damn it, now I'm just angry that we didn't get that track! Anywho, I don't really know what else to say. I just think this track is fun to race on, and it has a cool theme, nice visuals, and a decent amount of variety. The music isn't really what I'd expect from a track like this, but I do enjoy it a fair bit. 15. Sky High Sunday. In my opinion, this track was pretty alright in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but here, it feels buttery smooth. I mean, it just fixes all of the weird stuff about the original version. First of all, they made it look clean. This is genuinely one of the most gorgeous tracks in the history of Mario Kart. Secondly, none of the jumps have awkward camera angles anymore, and the new trick system makes them feel extremely satisfying to go over. There are some new paths integrated into the track, and they all feel completely natural. There are also so many spots for rail grinding and wall riding, like I can't even begin to count! I mean, this track just blends with all the new mechanics like a chocolate milkshake. They should have just saved this track for this game and given us Piranha Plant Pipeline in the Booster Course Pass. I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, the amount of stuff to do on this track is absolutely nuts, and it's so fun to race on. I honestly wish I could rank it higher, but it is still an oval, and ovals are hard to justify. That said, I'd be lying if I didn't say this is the greatest oval track ever created. 14. DK Pass. It sure has been a minute since we've raced on DK Pass. This track is a perfect mixture of new and familiar. The first half is what you'd expect from an HD remake of this track, with the same old snowy road cliffside, but now with a cool pole shortcut that feels really gratifying to do. However, the second half of the track has been changed from a generic snowy ravine to a ski resort, seemingly as homage to DK Summit. This is honestly so much more interesting, and the layout here has spots for tricking and rail grinding. The track overall feels more fun to drive around than it ever has due to the surprisingly non-slippery physics and the numerous spots to perform tricks, especially at the end, which now has multiple jumps. That and the overall layout remaining a drifting paradise. The lack of snowmen on the final turn is kind of unfortunate and baffling since they're a playable character, but honestly, that's more of a nitpick. While this still isn't the most mind-boggling track, I think it's a perfectly welcome addition and a pretty enjoyable experience. 13. Acorn Heights. This track kinda feels like Wild Woods and Maple Treeway rolled into one. The beginning is nothing too crazy, having a long turn through a treehouse with some boost panels and then a bridge with 3 different grind rails to take. But these grind rails are fun to take since each one is pretty different. Then you glide into this beautiful ravine area where you've got all the options you could ever want. Just look at how many leaves and mushrooms and vines there are. You can trick, rail grind, and wall ride to your heart's content. And because there's so many options, odds are no 2 laps are exactly the same. This part is what really elevates this track to its highest heights. After that is this tree root area with 4 splitting paths and some giant acorns that roll down at you. This part feels like you're winding down from the previous area. It's pretty fun to trick off these little bumps and grind on the vines, but the sheer openness makes it a bit too easy to dodge the giant acorns. But even with that one small problem, this track is a really enjoyable experience, and the whole fairy tale-esque theme is quite nice. Definitely one of my favorite tracks of this archetype. 12. Whistle Stop Summit. Calamari Desert wishes it was this good. On paper, this track has a solid layout with a decent amount of satisfying turns and whatnot, and a train obstacle that isn't a flat-out nuisance. But what elevates it above and beyond is that it's one of the tracks that leans the hardest into rail grinding. I mean, you can literally grind on the railroad tracks. That, my friends, is what we in the biz like to call ingenious. And a ton of fun. Not only do you have to be cautious of the train while you're in its path, but the amount of tricking you can do is totally bonkers and feels oh so satisfying. I mean, there's basically never a dull moment in this track, mainly because even the simpler sections allow you to do dumb fun stuff. And with how much you can alternate between the paths, you could make all 3 laps of this track a little different. I really like this one. It's not the kind of track I would have expected to enjoy, but it delivered. If I had to name one problem, it's that I find the music extremely piercing. But that's it. The rest of this track is great. 11. Wario Shipyard. I consider this my guilty pleasure track, as most people seem to think rather lowly of it. I'll even admit, I do think it's a bit worse than the original track, but not by much. This is definitely the most fun water-based track to race on. Not only because the layout is challenging in a fair way, but also because the water in this track is wavy, which is naturally more engaging than calm water. There are numerous tight turns and forks in the road, and the treacherous waves means there's almost always a chance to do tricks. The glider is replaced with a normal boost ramp that allows you to rail grind on ship mass, which is honestly a solid trade-off. It is unfortunate that most of the Wario theming is gone, but the new haunted shipwreck aesthetic is pretty sick. And hey, the tunnel has a giant Wario head on it, and he laughs when you approach it. Also, the music is an absolute banger. It was already one of the GOATs of Mario Kart 7, and it's done justice here. So all in all, while it would have made more sense if this track was remade in the Booster Course Pass, I am totally fine with this. 10. Toad's Factory. After 17 long-awaited years, this track makes its epic return. While it wasn't exactly one of my favorites from the Wii, it was by far one of the tracks that deserved to get a remake the most. And oh boy does it deliver. It retains everything that was great about the original track. The conveyor belts, the item box smashers, the bulldozers that reveal and hide boost panels, the catchy music, all of it is still here! And the experience is enjoyable as ever. The conveyor belts force you to make split-second decisions, the turns feel satisfying, and there are some new paths you can take via rail grinding and wall riding, with the coolest one being these steel girders at the end. Even the bulldozers have grind rails atop them and can even be tricked off of. This is everything I could ever want out of a remake of this track. While it isn't as immersive to explore and free roam as a track like Shy Guy Bazaar, there's still a great sense of novelty in being able to explore the factory and all the construction stuff around it. Nothing but smiles for this remake. 9. Wario Stadium. Nintendo actually did it. They remade the missing N64 track after it collected dust for almost 3 decades. So congratulations, MK64. You're the first ever Mario Kart to have all your tracks get retro remakes. But that aside, they gave this track such a loving and wonderful glow-up. Ostensibly the biggest one a Mario Kart track has ever received. I didn't necessarily hate the original track, but I definitely thought it was mediocre and uneventful. This remake fixes every single problem the original track had. It's a much more acceptable length, the big jump towards the end now only helps you, and there's actually stuff to do at almost every point. Like Sky High Sunday, this track feels like it was made for Mario Kart World's mechanics. Not only is there an insane amount of places to trick, but you can ride on the walls too. The big jump in particular is oh so gratifying to go over, especially with the fire going off like, whoo baby! Not only that, but the turns feel great to drift around as well. I also really like the stadium's new industrialized kind of Mad Max aesthetic. It's super cool. On another note, this is one of the best tracks to explore in free roam due to the hulking size of the stadium. A part of me wishes the track layout had just a couple extra turns near the middle, but honestly, that's not a deal breaker when it's an absolute blast and a half to race on. 8. Great Question Block Ruins. Question blocks are one of the most important aspects of Mario games, so making a track themed after them just makes all the sense in the world. Before we get to the track itself, I just have to say, it has one of the sickest entrances from intermissions out of any track. You shoot high into the clouds next to a towering column of water, and then you're met with these staggering golden ruins. As for the track itself, it's an absolute banger. It's really fun to drive on, with plenty of satisfying turns and jumps and an exhilarating glider segment at the end. What makes it even cooler is the sheer amount of hidden paths you can access with wall rides and rail grinds. I mean, holy! This is sky-high Sunday levels of varied. How about this simple but effective wall ride over this turn so you can glide over this clouded part? That's pretty cool. Or, how about the super cool tech where you bounce off the side of a floating ring and wall ride on a giant brick block? I can't tell if I'm doing it right in this footage, but either way, it's really satisfying. The clouded section itself has a lot of alternate paths to take as well, letting you pull off all kinds of strats. The sheer amount of stuff to do means no two laps on this track are exactly the same, and it makes for one of the best tracks in the game. Also, spicy take here. I've seen people say the name of this track is dumb, but honestly, I think it sounds kinda cool. 7. Choco Mountain. Talk about a sick reimagining! Most retro tracks in the series are like recreations of their original counterparts. This, on the other hand, is a reinvention of Choco Mountain. It's been transformed from a simple quote-quote chocolate mountain into a freaking monster truck arena. It's so out of left field, but I absolutely love it. It's also really cool that the actual mountainous terrain is shaped like a monster truck. But even despite this drastic overhaul, the layout is kept similar, with a lot of the turns feeling perfectly familiar. In fact, I think it's more fun than it ever has been. Not only are the turns tight, but the massive pools of muck and the charging chucks that run around and kick footballs at you add a fun layer of challenge. They also kept the falling boulders at the end, which is certainly appreciated. The final stretch of jumps is hella satisfying to go over as well. Top it all off with an absolutely badass metal remix that sounds straight out of Smash Bros. And you got the ultimate version of Choco Mountain. I get why some people might argue this is a wasted track slot, but honestly, I don't agree. It's a strange choice, I'll admit, but not a bad one. Oh, and I almost forgot. Shout out to the layouts of Choco Island from Super Mario Kart in the track's open world. 6. DK Spaceport. It's about time DK got a genuinely unique track. The idea of transforming 25M from the original Donkey Kong into a robotic spaceport is f***ing brilliant, and the result is peak! This might just be the best track from any Mushroom Cup ever. It feels like a mini adventure that culminates in a boss fight, which I have no idea how they pulled that off. After making a couple short turns, you glide towards the spaceport and see a massive robot Donkey Kong climbing up the whole thing, just like the good old days. And then you start making your way up. Sure, it might technically just be a bunch of straightaways and U-turns, but every single one gives you something new to do, and they're all a ton of fun to drive across. First, you dodge barrels rolling straight towards you, and you can either jump over them or just weave between them. Then you dodge barrels rolling at you from the sides, and there are a bunch of trick ramps here. Then there are 2 calm sections, with the first one emphasizing rail grinding and the second one emphasizing wall riding. And for the finale, you face off against Robo DK himself as he throws huge barrels at you, which are a lot more dangerous than the earlier barrels. Even the music escalates with the track, with each section having more intense instrumentation than the last. All in all, this is without question one of the biggest winners in the whole game. 5. Dry Bones Burnout. I wonder what's so awesome about a Dry Bones themed lava track with an aesthetic resembling Dia de los Muertos. Not only does this track have one of the absolute best themes out of any track in the whole series, but the layout is absolutely mad. By itself, it's a ton of fun to drive around with a lot of twists and turns and jumps and stuff, but just like Sky High Sunday and Great Question Block Ruins, the amount of alternate paths on this track is flabbergasting. You're given multiple options for almost the entire track, whether that be simple paths on the sides or some really cool ones that are hidden in plain sight, like this one wall ride above the final series of turns that leads to a glide ramp that lets you access an upper route above the starting line. It's like squeaky clean sprint all over again. Hell, even this section at the beginning kinda trolls you in an endearing way. Oh, you fell off this bridge? Not to worry. There's another path beneath you that you definitely didn't think was there. And I didn't even mention how radical the track is visually. I mean, just look at this epic money shot after the glide ramp. This track just has it all, man. Amazing theme, killer visuals, and most importantly, a thrilling layout that gives you an insane amount of stuff to do. 4. Dino Dino Jungle. This was already a great track in Double Dash at 7, but holy! This version is a heckin' masterpiece! The presence of only one dinosaur in previous versions was really jarring, but in this version, there's 3 different types, all of which have different behavior and move around while the race is going. There's Triceratops you can actually drive up, Brachiosaurs that act like the original dinosaur, and my personal favorite, T-Rexes that rampage around, destroying everything in their path. Wowzers! In addition to this, they gave it an epic visual facelift, with it now taking place at a Jurassic Park-style research lab. Now that's what I call awesome! In addition to all this, the layout is still just as fun as ever. It has some really satisfying turns and some cool new alternate paths within the laboratory. And this ending part now has a bunch of trick ramps, which is a little random, but it makes it all the more fun. Even the music was remixed in an appropriately bizarre manner, with synths, guitar, and actual drums. The laboratory is a ton of fun to explore in free roam as well, although it's not quite on the same level as some other tracks. All in all, this isn't what I would have expected out of a remake of this track at all, but holy shit, I absolutely love it! 3. Airship Fortress. At long last, this track finally got an HD remake. I'm honestly kinda glad they didn't remake it in the Booster Course Pass. Not too much has changed about it, but obviously that's no big deal, because it was spectacular to begin with. The visual overhaul is absolutely wild. There's genuine battle going on between the different airships flying around, and you can actually see the explosions occurring. Hell, there's even fire raining down on the last stretch of the track. The airship itself also looks cooler than ever, especially on the inside. The more industrialized theme is so dope, and it fits in perfectly with the vibes of the track as a whole. Definitely better than that weird drinking bar the Mario Kart Tour version had. Outside of some grind rails along the edges of a few parts of the track, the layout is totally unchanged, which again is not a problem. It's still as fun as ever with tons of sharp, satisfying turns, and it has the bonsai bills, rocky wrenches, and moving burners, which are actually rather dangerous. There isn't too much to do with this track in free roam, but the novelty of exploring the entire airship as well as driving further up and down the large tower is so great. 2. Rainbow Road. Holy shit! Nintendo absolutely cooked with this track! This truly feels like a grand finale. First things first, The entrance to this track in the Grand Prix is without question the greatest entrance to a Mario Kart track of all time. As you approach the Crown City Bridge, you see this magical looking rainbow star ring portal, and you get shot through said portal while your screen keeps getting brighter, eventually going fully white for a second, and then bang, you're at the track. Bro, did I just ascend to heaven? That was sick! But of course, the real star of the show here is the actual track. In a way, it feels like every previous Rainbow Road combined. It's by far the longest track in the whole series, but it is worth every single second. It starts off with some typical Rainbow Road stuff, with some fun turns and jumps complete with a gorgeous looking road. After that, there's a part where you enter the permanent boost state from Starview Peak, only this time, it actually does feel like you're going faster. Then you glide into an enchanted forest area with a beautiful glittery river and giant blue crystalline formations. This feels kinda weird to include in a Rainbow Road, but honestly, I kinda dig it. You eventually make it back on the road, which is now entirely cool colored, and make some more turns, which are reminiscent of Mario Kart 8 Anti-Grav. Then you shoot off into outer space, where you're met by this awesome looking space station. You end up driving down a series of roads reminiscent of a section of Bowser's Galaxy Reactor, where you have to avoid rainbow thwomps. And finally, you're shot out of the space station and through a massive colorful vortex onto an entirely warm-colored road, where you make even more crazy turns. This entire last section not only has the permanent boost state, but also a ton of regular boost panels, giving it an almost unparalleled sense of speed. In addition, there's a train that flies by carrying some familiar faces, such as Robo DK. And then, after one more glider, that's the end. Oh my goodness gracious, that was unbelievably amazing! Not only is the track kept fresh with each section, but the fun factor is through the roof, and the visual spectacle is absolutely breathtaking. I couldn't care less that it lacks any of the new mechanics, or that it lacks the difficulty of other Rainbow Roads. And like DK Spaceport, the music dynamically changes with the track, with each section feeling totally different from each other. All in all, I'm still a little spun as to whether I like this more than Mario Kart 7's Rainbow Road, but I can confidently say this is at least a top 10 track in the entire series. 1. Bowser's Castle. Yeah, I get it. I'm Bowser's #1 fan. I'm biased, whatevs. But also, holy peak, Batman! I don't know how, but they actually surpassed the supreme double S tier banger that is Mario Kart 8's Bowser's Castle. I mean, where do I even begin? Visually, it does not get much better than a high-tech fortress mounted atop a volcano with a Bowser mushroom cloud looming over it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Actually racing on this beast of a track is high-energy fun from start to finish. The first half has you making crazy sharp turns, where the innermost path has lava bubbles to look out for, which is not only exhilarating, but also dangerous. Then you blast through a tunnel of lava into a thunderstorm section, where your cart enters the permanent boost state from Starview Peak and Rainbow Road. Hell, this section feels even faster than Rainbow Road. From this point onward, you're taking more sharp turns with lava surrounding you, and because you're going so fast, it's surprisingly easy to take a bad line and slip into the lava, which just makes it all the more thrilling. The final part has you gliding onto a split road where massive balls of fire rain down, and these things can be pretty hard to dodge sometimes. It really feels like a final test of skill, befitting the theme of Bowser. And to top it all off, the music is some of the most hardcore metal I've ever heard in a Nintendo game. In all honesty, I think it's finally dethroned Rock Rock Mountain as my favorite track song in the whole series. I mean, this track just does everything right. It's exciting, it's difficult in a fun way, the visual spectacle is wild, the music goes so hard, it takes a cool spin on my favorite theme, like I could go on about this forever! If this game gets DLC, or if we get a new Mario Kart some 10 years in the future, I will be speechless if we get a track better than this. And there you go. There is all 30 standard tracks in Mario Kart World ranked by me. I absolutely adore this game, and I'm certainly interested to see how it's gonna continue to evolve. 200cc would be a real treat, especially for the intermissions. No, I'm still not ranking the intermissions, so shut up. But anyways, if you've made it to this point, I just want to say thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.